Thank you for Patreon now for donating to the Patreon.
Hey guys, it's Vanguard back in the Vanguard deck profile. So I hope you guys enjoyed the like, comment, subscribe, must watch out. This time we're covering set 11 and possibly the last deck I do for set 11. Depends on what I'm feeling about the last two. And that is Brandt, Elehireseade. You know, the weird electric thing that like has a 15k base. Yeah, so before we get this one started, remember that these decks are built for fun. They're not meant to be optimal. They're optimal by pure accident. If you have a more optimal build or build that you like, then go for it by all means. But these decks are just meant to be built for fun, just screw around. So go get started, shall we? Today, like I said earlier, we have Elihire as the main grade 3. Yeah, this deck is probably the theory. This deck is the most that I hit the theory of it's not supposed to work. And it does, just less than like my other previous attempts of making a deck that wasn't supposed to work half, because those decks tend to do a lot better than they should. And this one still does better than it should, but to not as broken of a degree. So let's go get this started, shall we? And we can see what we got. Rest of the day, we have our starter in short rest, Arkwright, grade 0 boost, 5k shield, 6k base. Honorable opponent movement, second draw card, it's just a free draw if you win second. This variant of the ride line does require Arkwright as the starter. The way I'm choosing it, I'm going the Arkwright line because I want to get the free research search. Trying that top 5 times fast. Research search, research search, research search, research search. It starts to get it's not hard to do, but it's like starts to get a little bit annoying as you go on with it. But yeah, anyways, I like to have the Arkwright line for the research search. You could also use I don't know what I was supposed to say Leonore. You could also use Ava's ride line because they have the exact same skill. However, I just choose Arkwright because I like to show off Arkwright more because I already have like Ava's main focus is being Ava over there. You can really use any line, but I do prefer the Arkwright line because it gets the searches by placing it, and it gets 2 cards out of deck for deck bending. Then we have our Over Trigger, Star Dragon, Deed of Infinitude, Eldo Breath, Gurzo Boost, 50k Shield, 5k Power, Over Trigger, email winner trigger in your deck. When it reveals as a trigger, move that card, draw a card, choose one unit, except for the turn. And if you revealed it during your draft check, activate its additional effect, which you can double the power and critical of all your former units until end of turn. Increase to double its power and critical when activated. Okay, so if you drive check this, which any of us that have played against Gravidia probably have PTSD against this thing for, if you drive check this, something on your board is probably getting 2 million. 1 million from this, and then it doubles from its own drive check abilities, so possibly 2 million on one unit, and then everything on your board basically gets double its critical, so either an extra critical or times 2, more or less. So, you know, all your things that had 1 crit become 2, all your things that had 2 become 4, etc., etc. So, yeah, Elder Breath is here for pressure. This deck does not hit super big, well, it hits big-ish numbers depending on how far you go, but yeah, no, Eldo Breath kind of makes it so that if you check that, it most likely is game, just because like extra crit pressure. So one of Eldo Breath. Then we have our normal triggers. We're on 5 draws in total. 1 Ember Gleam Dragon, grades to a boost, 5k shield, 5k power. You can really make this any non-effect draw you want. I just chose to make this the effect draw just because, or not the effect draw just because I like this thing. I actually like looking at it. Then we have our 4 effect draws in Amulete Connector, grade 0 boost, 5k shield, 4k base. Continues guard circle. If your opponent's Vanguards are grade 3 or greatest with 5k shield, you know, 10k shield, that's just nice to have. It also increases your hand for the draw power, which is why I do run 5 draws, because this deck does kind of require specific pieces, so having any chance to get the hand cards to possibly draw into them is pretty nice. Then we have 6 crit and 2 copies of Star Aggression Dragon, grade 0 boost, 15k shield, 5k power. Again, can be any crit, but or any non-effect crit, but I just like Star Aggression Dragon. He's one of my favorite crits. And then we have 4 copies of Patrol Robot Decker Cop, grade 0 boost, 15k shield, 4k power. Critical trigger, auto react, and abilities you boost it, put this into solo, choose one reach, extra 2k for the turn. Okay, you will never need that ability. You have no soul problems whatsoever in this entire deck. And even if you did, then I don't think this would be a good option because you're probably not going to call it to rear guard. But it is there for the 2k, which might make a difference. It might not. It really just depends on what your board setup looks like. So if you wanted to, you could just turn this into a 5k crit instead and just make it a vanilla. But just in case, you know, just in case for the 2k. So 4 of Decker Cop, 2 of Star Aggression. It can be any 6 crits, technically speaking. So again, 6 crit, 5 draws. Then we have 4 heals and Ultra Rate Spear Dragon, grades a boost, 15k shield, 5k power. Yeah, this is just the heal I think I just shove into every deck now because, like, I don't want to use the Cardinal one. I don't want to use the Aura Battle Princess one. The two other ones that I do know of are both the effect ones, the 3 other ones I know are all effect heals, which I don't like the effect heals too much because they are fluctuating 10 to 25k shield, and I'd rather have a consistent 15 than a card that's normally 10 but turns into a 25 in specific situations. But yeah, so run this heal, run whatever heal you want. I prefer normal heals, so I wouldn't go the effect heal route, but if you want to go the effect heal route, go ahead. Then move on to our grade 1s. First up, we have the most important card in this deck. 4 of Dispatch, 3 Sisters of Cleaning. Grade 1 set order. After set orders played, put it to your order zone. Continuous order zone during your turn. All your farming groups 2k. Plus 2k. Okay. This card does not cost any counter boss. This deck has no soul problem whatsoever. So being able just to play this for free is great. And considering it gives your entire farm mode 2k, and you can just start playing this the second you start playing the game. Pretty nice. Honest to God. Downside is I rarely pull this in my opening hand, but when I do get to do it, it kind of sets up the deck a little bit, because it's a free 2k plus that does stack, so if you manage to get all 4 out, which I've only accomplished once in the entire time of playing this variant of the deck, it gets a free plus 8 to farm row. 4 of Dispatch, 3 Citrus of Cleaning. The first one doesn't do too much, the second one does okay, the third one actually starts making difference, and then the fourth one is, like, not a big difference, but it's still enough to push, so 4 of. Then we have the line of the deck that makes this deck the reason why it exists. 4 copies of Putzen, Strutzen, Moby. I've said all of that wrong. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, AK base, auto placed on rearguard circle, counter boss 1 with the top 5 card of your deck. You have to 1 dispatch 3 Sisters of Cleaning, or Putzen, Sweatserm brush from among them, or reveal it, put it in your hand, shuffle your deck. So either get another searcher or get the order. Either way, pretty solid. I'm gonna say this right now, most of the time I tend to have brush in my hand, like it's almost guaranteed, so I will probably use a skill to fetch out this if I see one. But either way, Mopi's still a good card because she either gets another searcher or she gets the order, or if you really want to take that challenge, you can get the searcher and then try to get another order off of it. So for Mopi, all around very solid grade 1. She only costs a counter boss, and she and the other 2 are the only cards in this deck that actually cost CB, so by all means go crazy with them. Or sorry, not other 2, other 1. Then there's Putzen, Suretstern, Brush. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, AK base. Auto when she's placed on rearguard circle. By counter bossing 1, you can look at the top 5 cards of your deck. You have to 1 dispatch the 3 Cleaning Sisters or Whelp or Welepo from among them. Reveal it, put it to your hand, shuffle your deck. All around, pretty solid, because again, either you get an order or you get a search of technically I'd argue the most important of the grade 1s, because if you look at how the deck is supposed to be played, she seems like the most important, but in my opinion it's these 2, because that one grade 1 does jack unless you have any number of these in the order zone that isn't 0. So in my opinion, she's the least important, and these 2 are the most important because they fetch out this. But I mean, take it as you will. 4 of Brush, you know, she is searchable via this, then she can get Wepo, who I guess benefits from these being in order zone, and then she could also get the order zone one as well. 4 Bush. And because they added to hand, you don't have to call over something. But if they did Superior Call, it wouldn't matter because they can be placed on rear guard by any means. So 4 Bush. And then 4 copies of Puchen, Soretz, and Whelp. So grade 1 boost, 5k shield, AK base, continues rear guard. This unit gets all the following abilities according to the number of dispatch of the 3 Cleaning Sisters in your order zone. If you have 0, it gets none of them. If you have 1 or more, she gets during your turn, she gets plus 5k power, so 13k base. If you have 2 or more, she cannot be chosen by your opponent's card effects, active on both players' turns. And then 3 or more, if this unit's in the back center row, or back row center column, all your back row rear units get plus 5k power also during your opponent's turns. So if you have 3 of them, which is more or less a rare occurrence for me because I tend to die by the second one, she'll be a 13k base during both players' turns who cannot be targeted by any means unless your opponent manages to target everything at once. And then the 5k will get added back to her during your turn, so she's an 18k during your turn. All around, pretty solid grade 1. She's a guaranteed 13k base. There's a chance she can end up hitting 18, and adding 5k to the whole back row does genuinely make this deck a lot more deadly, but it's a matter of can you get to the point where you can play a third one. So 4 of Aleppo, really nice grade 1. Again, downside to her is if you don't see any of these, she is a vanilla, so by default she is the worst one because she is searchable via this, who is also searchable via this, and both of them also search out a copy of this. So 4 of Aleppo, not a bad grade 1, don't get me wrong. And once she hits the board and you start building up the dispatches, then she's really good. But until then, she's essentially vanilla, so take that as you will, but 4 of, obviously. And by the way, if you couldn't tell earlier, this is the reason why this deck exists, because I was like, I want to use these new cards, and none of them, well, back in set 10, and none of them had an actual grade 3, so I was like, fuck it, let's just get Elehireseade in here and just make this the deck spaces. Then we have 4 copies of Rock Shell Monster Shirokapide. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, continues rear guard during turn if your Vanguard's original power is 15k or greater, gets plus 10k power. Yeah, Bushy randomly, I think Bushy ran out of ideas in set 11 because they randomly gave a lot of, like, decks like Shield Fisher, Elihire, etc., like, random card, like one random card that, granted, gave them actual support, but like, why one card specifically? Why not, like, with all the space you probably have, why not add in, I don't know, a ride line for each of them, or at least make a generic ride line for each nation? I don't know why. They could have taken my idea of the 3 cleaning sisters, changed the lore a little bit, or not changed the lore, depending on how they wanted to do it, just to screw around with it, and then gave this deck an actual ride line, and that led up to Elihire. I don't know why they didn't, but fair enough. Anyways, being able to be an 18k swinger or booster, depending on where it is on the board, just by having the main grade 3 out on Vanguard Circle is amazing, because if you do end up getting the 3rd order, this thing in the back row becomes a 23k base. All around, Rockshell is just a very solid grade 1. Like I said, it's an 18k booster swinger regardless of what point in the game you're at, as long as you're on the grade 3, and if this thing is also in the back row with it, it's a 23k. 4 of Rockshell Monster. Just a solid grade 1 who adds pressure and definitely fixes the deck's problem from before of not having the numbers. Because, like, it still doesn't have amazing numbers, but this made it better. Then we have 4 copies of our PG and Violate Dragon, grade 1 boost, 5k, or 0 sources, K base. Continue Sentinel, you have to form themselves in deck ones, put in guard circle, choose one of each, it cannot be hit on the battle. And if your hand is 2 or more cards, choose a card from your discard it. Send a PG, not supposed to it. Basically, that means if this and only one of the cards you place on guard circle, you don't have to discard one because it's great. Because that means you can rush your opponent in the early game, which is something you might do if your opponent gives you enough CB to spam out more than one of these. And then when your opponent counterattacks you, you can just throw down the PG and be like, aha, I survived, fuck you. All around, Violate Dragon is a very solid PG. You can run Planet well because they have the exact same skill. I prefer Violate just because, I don't know, I just like Violate more. But I mean, you can go with either one. Then we have last grade 1 of the deck, and it's the grade 1 of the red deck, none of the main deck because it has no rearguard skill, and that is Monster Soul Searching Arkwright. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, auto when she's placed by riding from short rest Arkwright. Search your deck for up to 1 research card, reveal it, put it in your hand, and shuffle your deck. Cool. It just by riding from the grade 0, you get a free search, so you can deck them, so you can see more copies of any of these 4 cards. That is literally my logic for putting this in the deck. I'm not even lying with you, and that's all I can say about it. It does it for free, and it gets you a hand card that you can either use for discard fodder next turn, or an order that you can use to chain in combos. All around, Monster Soul Searching Arkwright, not a bad grade 1. Again, you can use the Ava line too because they have the exact same skills, just different names obviously, but I just was like, Ava already has this big focus, and I talked more about Ava than I talked about Arkwright, so I might as well give Arkwright a spotlight. So 1 of Arkwright in the right deck, none of the main deck because it has no rearguard skill, also because this takes up like 95% of the space. Then we have our grade 2 orders, or grade 2s. First up, we start off with the order that is searchable via Arkwright, and that's 3 copies of Experiment Successful. Grade 2, set order, set orders play, put it to your order zone. Auto, when it's put into your order zone, draw a card, choose a card from your hand, discard it, and then if your order zone has 3 or more research cards, by soul blasting, when choosing opponent's rearguard and bind it. Okay, I'm gonna tell you right now, these are the only 2 orders in the deck, so the only ever time you're going to be able to pull that ability off is if you just kept playing every one of these each turn, which at that point would imply that you bricked and didn't see a copy of Dispatch the 3 Cleaning Sisters. So if that happened, you probably already lost because you lost your main win con, but whatever. The point is, you played in your order zone, you get that draw on your discard, so you try to filter out for next turn, which tends to happen to me a lot, so there's that. But then also, you know, if you end up getting the 3rd one to order zone, so the one time you're going to be able to do it, you can Soul Blast 1. This is literally the only card in the deck that's Soul Blast, by the way. Choose an opponent's rearguard and bind it. So all around solid card. It can get rid of rearguards and get a draw and discard. If you want, I would say you could combo the Penguin into this deck if you really wanted to, except there's only 2 more units left, and I mean in general, so that kind of tells you what both of them are if you've been paying attention to this deck profile. So there's not really the concept of available space in this deck. But yeah, 3 of Experiment Successful. It's searchable, and it's a free order that gets you a draw and discard and possibly allows you to bind a rearguard. That's all I can say. And then we have our only other grade 2 in the deck, 1 of in the right deck, none in the main deck, of Sleeping Protector Arkwright. Grade 2 and set 5k shield, 10k base, auto when she's placed by riding from Monster Soul Searching Arkwright. Search your deck to 1 research card, reveal it, put it to your hand, and shuffle your deck. Yeah, it's literally just the same thing as the grade 1. You get 2 researches out, so you're guaranteed to get at least 2 of them. It is just here for deck fitting, simply put, and again, you could use the Ava line because they do the exact same thing, but again, might as well use the Arkwright line because they deal with monsters, and this deck does have a monster as a main grade 3, and I never get to show off Arkwright, so there's that. Like, and then that I can say nothing more about this. You shouldn't run in the main deck because again, spacing is this consistency over here, but then also it doesn't have a rearguard skill, so there's that. And by default, we move on to our last card in the deck. 3 of in the main deck, 1 of in the right deck. If you guessed it, Electromagnetic Monster Elehireseade. Grade 3, 10% 13k, 15k base, my bad. Continues Vanguard or Rearguard Circle. If your order zone has no cards, it cannot attack. Okay, BS. you are guaranteed to get at least one set order. Because no matter if you're going first or second, unless Bushy finds a way to deal 3 damage before either player can start attacking, which so currently there's only a way to do 1 damage, and that's via, to my knowledge, and that's via Spin Kid from Nova Grappler and V, where I believe you have to reveal Spinning Valiant to do a bop damage when he's placed, which again, specifically on Vanguard circles, so you can't do it more than once, but you know, this is a guaranteed, when you ride it, search the deck for an order. So unless your opponent finds a way to deal 3 damage and yeet all of these into your damage zone before you get to ride, then you are guaranteed to be able to attack with this thing. 15k doesn't make too much of a difference, especially when we compare it to Shield Fisher, who kind of cuts the guarding power down just that little bit more. But I mean, all around, Elihire is still a pretty solid grade 3, just because it can lower the guard amount a little bit more, and it could also help increase that power a little bit more because it is a 15k base after all. So now an 8k booster is now a 23k swing. So there's that. So 20k guards are no longer a 1 to pass, or sorry, no longer a 2 to pass. Now they're a 1 to pass. So all around, he may be short, small, have little to no skill whatsoever, and be a 15k base, and that's pretty much the only unique thing about him. But he's a nice card to sit on, and unlike every other main grade 3 in Brandt Gate, doesn't require another subset of cards to build their deck around. Because if you realize it, these 4, which you're probably going to run all of them at 4, at least 3 of each, if considering the main the focus of the deck, they're probably going to be ran at 4s anyways, take up 16 spaces on their own, plus the triggers and the ride line. That's an additional 20 cards. You already lost 36, and you have to run the 4 PGs, so 40. So, oh yeah, and then they'll probably ride, like, depending on what you do for your ride line, you're definitely going to run any order whatsoever. So depending on what that is, you might fluctuate between the copies. So at that point, you're kind of just like, fuck it, whatever I can get my hands on, get my hands on. So this deck does kind of take up a lot of space, but that's just how it is. It does work, just in its own unique way. Either way, 3 of Elihire, 1 of in the ride deck, just because, like, it's a 15k base that does its job. It's the one that doesn't require a specific order in the order zone, outside of Silhouette, but Silhouette, again, requires other pieces, so there's that. And that's it for the deck. I hope you guys enjoyed. Like, if this deck got a main grade 3 that focused on the sisters, then this deck would obviously be a lot better. Even if that main grade 3 only had 1 skill, no matter what it is, as long as it focused on them, it probably would be a lot better than Elihire. But still, even though Elihire is kind of like just the face of the deck, granted a very ugly and disturbing face at that, no offense, he kind of just sets up this to be an 18k base, and then also these 3 do benefit from having free range of all the counterblast and searching capabilities possible. So, like, he does nothing, but inherently he allows the deck to be as free as it wants to be. So, without further ado, I'm going to end this one here. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, join us, go follow Twitch, and I'll see you all in the next one. Don't forget to stand up your Vanguards.